evening. My name is Sam Koenig, and I am one of the co-chairs of the West Allis Youth Commission. I thank all of you for coming tonight. The questions you will be asked this evening were written and chosen by the members of the West Allis Youth Commission. Tonight's format for the forum will be, you will have a 1-minute introduction, and then after that, with each question, you will have a maximum of 90 seconds to answer each question. Please pay attention to your timekeeper in the front row so we can stay on schedule. If there's time at the end, there may be time for a 1-minute closing statement. All candidates will answer the same question. The first question will start with candidate Clark answering, our second with candidate Brandt, our third with candidate Haass, and so on. We'll start with the introductions. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Thanks to the Youth Commission for arranging this forum. I'm seeking the 5th District Aldermanic position because of my passion for West Allis, as demonstrated by more than 75 years of service to the city. I have a lifelong history of service to my country and community. I joined the Marine Corps out of high school as a member of Alice Chalmers here in West Allis. I was asked to serve on the executive board of the Boy Scouts. Subsequently, I served as the board chair of the YMCA, and I also have served on the Centennial Celebration Committee. I most recently was on the Police and Fire Commission, and I headed up the city's Centennial, as I mentioned. I am also board chair of Aurora West Allis Medical Center, which is the city's largest employer. I'm excited about bringing my skills as a leader, a listener, and a consensus builder to the tasks at hand. Thank you.
Good evening. I got to get this right. I want to thank Mayor Dan Devine and the Youth Commission for organizing tonight's forum. I am a lifelong resident of West Allis. I graduated from Nathan Hale High School in 1978. My husband and I own a house on 93rd Street. My parents' daughter and her family are proud to call West Allis their home. I am running for alderperson because I have a sincere interest and passion for the city of West Allis. I am the executive director of the West Allis West Milwaukee Chamber of Commerce. In my role at the chamber, I represent and speak on behalf of people that I serve, and I value the ability to help both businesses and citizens in my communities. I listen to community needs and facilitate results. District 5 is a vibrant neighborhood within West Allis, and I feel that my teamwork skills can continue to make positive things happen. I work well with individual citizens as well as the wide range of city leadership. Additionally, I have strong community involvement ranging from participation in economic development programs to working on the committee for Candy Cane Lane.
Thank you, Ms. Brandt.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kevin Haass, and I've been a West Allis resident all my life as well. In fact, Jim Sengstock, the retiring alderman who we are all trying to, whose seat we're trying to get, he was my 8th grade rec league basketball coach. In my real job, I'm a lawyer, and it's valuable to have a lawyer on the Common Council, especially when you're making laws. I have served on the West Allis Police and Fire Commission for the last 9 years. I've also served on the Board of Review and been chairman of the Board of Review. And my pledge to everyone is that as your alderman, I'll be responsible and responsive. Responsible as a good steward of your tax dollars, and responsive in that in all my campaign material on my website, and I provide my cell phone number. And so if folks have any issues, they can get me on my cell phone. It's 414-704-1164. And with that, I pledge I'll be responsible and responsive. Thank you.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. I'd like to thank the commission for letting me participate tonight, the Youth Commission. First of all, I was born and raised in the city of West Allis. I lived here all my life. I lived in the 5th District for 40 years. I served on several committees in the city of West Allis, and I also I own my own construction firm that I am president of, and this gives me an eligibility to conduct different systems and a good background for having to work with all the other different facilities in the city of West Dallas. And with that, thank you very much.
Mr. Blask?
I pledge to support the Constitution and the laws of the state of Wisconsin. I promise my best efforts to represent the interests of all our citizens, senior, young adult, and child. The dignity of life in an urban community is a guiding principle in Blask Family Choices. I am a Wisconsin retirement recipient. I will defer my state pension until I complete my alderperson term to avoid the double-dipping issue. I will represent my community and its people to the fullest of my ability and avoid all business and personal conflict of interest. I will promote public safety and welfare. I will sponsor a joint resolution of the Common Council asking the district attorney to appoint a special prosecutor to take a second look at the death of a 16-year-old. The West Dallas Police Department recommended charges in that matter, and I commend the police and emergency fire personnel who did their duty in attempting to save the 16-year-old resident. I believe life is sacred. I believe a job is a privilege. Each privilege carries responsibility. And I didn't get to finish, but thank you.
Mr. Beaudry?
Yes, I'd like to thank the Youth Commission for hosting the forum tonight. I'm a 30-year retired police officer in the city of West Dallas. I was officer friendly for 12 years, and I'm a fixer, problem solver. And I think that's what the city needs in this position, as a problem solver. I know where to go, who to talk to, not necessarily the top of the list, but the worker that does the job. I can find that person, and I can make sure that your problem is solved. And I want to thank you for, again, for hosting this forum. Thank you.
Okay. Our first question will be asked by Rachel Kirchner.
What is your most important concern that led you to run for alderman?
Mr. Clark?
What is the most?
Your most important concern that led you to run?
Thank you. I view the issue not so much as concerns, but as challenges and opportunities. I really believe in a fair and responsible and reasonable tax base, support for advances in our public safety, commitment to a robust development program, our ability to apply the tools of continuous improvement to all aspects of government, and our success in harnessing the talent of the people in the district relative to their passion, their interest, and bringing them to bear on the issues and the challenges in West Dallas. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
My top concern is to control property taxes, but also to stimulate economic growth. I would work with the Department of Development on programs which will bring in new business and reduce taxes to create jobs for our citizens, while continuing to support our existing businesses during these challenging times. With aging demographics, we need to replace our experienced workers when they retire, and yet also prepare our youth for the professional and technical jobs in our community. We need to attract young professionals, families, and businesses to our community by promoting the value of West Dallas and enhancing our community image.
Mr. Haass?
Thank you. And the reason I'm running is because I really enjoy being involved in the community, and as a lawyer, I think I bring something to the table in the legislative process. The most important concern is quality of life. Quality of life, everything goes into quality of life for our community and for our residents. Redevelopment is an important part. Keeping taxes as low as possible is an important part. Public safety is an important part. All those issues are all tied into quality of life, and that is the most important reason for running.
Mr. Motter?
Yes. Well, I'm running because I was born and raised in this community. I brought my family up in this community, and it's a lovely place to live. And I'm running to see that if we can still keep everything that we had in the past and watch the spending that goes on and promote new things to help generate departments so they can have enough money to work properly and furnish all the necessary things that are necessary for this community. Being an alderman, even on the 5th district, you still have to consider that you're working for the whole city. And at that point, you got to work with the whole common council so this whole city can run in a smooth way. Thank you.
Mr. Blask.
Thank you. I believe a job is a privilege, therefore I believe in local rule. Following that from a logical sequence, there should be residency among our local employees. Basically, we are sending hundreds of thousands of dollars outside the community each year. Now, we need to find qualified employees, and we will continue to do that. But we also want residents, people who believe in the community, people who raise their families here, people who send their children here, send their children to school here. That's really what we want for our community, is people like you here. And I don't know if you were the sons and daughters of public employees. I moved here with my wife in 1970 because I thought it was a good place to raise children. Our 6 children attended Hale, Central, but that does not matter. We had a good time in the school system, and we benefited from it. 6 children, 5 with college educations, and we've been happily ever since. I want to point out that a second issue that I think is important. We need a domestic violence center, and by that I mean an actual shelter in the city of West Allis. Domestic violence is a devastating problem for the community. Thank you.
Mr. Beaudry.
Yes, as I stated before, I'm retired. I have the time to be available 24/7. I can give you my cell phone if you want. That's not a problem. I tend to think outside the box a little bit once in a while, get a little carried away. But I know that we're looking at taxes, security, and the quality of life that we're enjoying now, and would like to see it continue in the future. I would work with all the different boards and groups to maintain that quality of life. In the 5th district, we have 2 parcels of land that I'm aware of that are standing open right now. I would work hard to make sure that what does go in there is a tax-paying property, generating tax dollars for the city of West Allis, and hopefully jobs and so on. I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by Bret Scarpaci.
What is your perception of the role of the United States in the world today?
Ms. Brandt.
I have not given that any thought at all, so I'm just not prepared to answer that right now.
Mr. Haass.
Yeah, thanks. And certainly that is something that we don't focus on here at the local level. We're more concerned about making sure the snow is plowed, making sure that we are responsive to constituent concerns and concerned about taxes. But I'll answer your question. The role of the United States in the world today, I think, is to be, as we've always been, protectors of democracy. And that is something that all of us can do to help support that by voting. Coming up on February 18th is the primary, and April 1st is the general election.
Mr. Motter.
Thank you. I also believe, as Kevin says, we do basically concern about our local government. And I do believe, though, that the United States of America is a forerunner of the countries, and a lot of countries look up to us. But what we have to realize, too, that we're not the country we were a few years ago, and we have to give and take a little bit, so we're not as a dictatorship or something of that sort. And I'm sure that's one of the things on a worldwide situation, but that's way out of the local hands of the 5th aldermanic seat in the city of West Dallas. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Thank you. Right now, America has a budget for its military forces that if you reduced it down by 10%, it would still be larger than any budget, including the entire world. So we are a military power. That gives us great economic power. We are not the economic power that we were when I grew up, but that does not matter. We're still producing at a gross domestic product that rivals the world. China is going through a huge economic turmoil and unrest because of the fact that they have supplied cheap labor to the rest of the world, and now they're paying the price, and their stock market is on the verge of collapsing. Someone will have to pick up the pieces. I expect that just similar to after the Second World War, when the Americans came in and rescued Japan. I happened to be at Irving when we were addressing the teachers from Japan who came here, and they asked, why is your, one of the school board members asked, why is your system so superior to ours? And the Japanese teachers looked around at us and they said, but it is yours. You imposed it on us, and we made it work. Now, Japanese students are doing very well in America, and I applaud them. But I just want to point out that we are still the leaders in the world in education.
Thank you, Mr. Blask. Mr. Beaudry?
I think the U.S. is the power in the world, and we are the peacekeepers of the world. A couple people have mentioned that it doesn't ring true to the 5th Aldermanic District, but it does, because the people that vote in this district show the rest of the city, the state, the United States, and the world that we have a democracy. And voting is very important, and keeping peace is a very big job. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. The perception of the U.S. in the world today is, in my opinion, a mixed bag. There are certainly many parts of the country, the world, that look upon us as the leader we are on many fronts, yet there are areas of conflict relative to religion and cultures and economic issues. China is having serious trouble right now. Our stock market has been tumbling pretty much since the first of the year. It just started a short while ago. We're under great economic pressure. We're under military pressure. We have many, many fine minds in our Congress, in our various institutions, but we have to recognize there's a changing world and figure out how to fit in and be an effective partner worldwide and build off the good relationships we have and see if we can help further influence where the world is going. Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by Jacqui Tavares.
What would you say is the greatest contribution you have made to the city of West Dallas?
We'll begin with Mr. Haass.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks for the question. The greatest contribution I've made to the city of West Dallas are sitting right there in the back, my 7-year-old twins, Henry and Clara Haass. And that was really a nice way of letting me tie them in. They're waving, and no, and so that's the greatest contribution. But also, I appreciate the opportunity to serve on the boards that I have served and continue to serve on, namely the Police and Fire Commission for the last 9 years, and the Board of Review, and having served on the Board of Review as chairperson as well.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. The greatest contribution that I realized that I would be able to be a citizen of the city of West Dallas and take advantage of everything that was offered to me over the years. It was a lovely place to raise a family. There's quite a few facilities, and and organizations that were available to my children, although they're quite a bit older than Mr. Haass's children. And the other ability that I was able to participate and serve on many boards in the city, and I felt that that would help me to become a good citizen in the city of West Dallas. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
That's toughie, but it's, when I served in the Reserve Police for 25 years, we assisted the police at that time. When our children went through the school system at Nathan Hale, at Irving, at Frank Lloyd Wright, all our children benefited from the activities there, whether they be athletic, arts, cultural, theater. I think the city has given me more than I've perhaps given it, and that's one reason why I would like to be your next alderman. I hope that I can finish up the final chapter of my career as an alderman here in West Dallas. I still believe there's a lot to be done. We're seeing such dramatic changes in terms of our 3 years ago, I worked on the foreclosure project for the Milwaukee County. It's stunning how many homes went into foreclosure. And I would like to finish up with an accomplishment that somehow returns home ownership to West Dallas. That would be my goal, and so my goal is still out in front of me, and I hope it's out there for you and as the future citizens.
Mr. Beaudry?
My best contribution was something that I did when I was the officer friendly, going around through the school system. And when we were in kindergarten, or you weren't, but some of the boys and girls that I taught got some information about strangers. And several times from the Detective Bureau came back to me that because of my information to the children and so on, they were able to get away from strangers, bad family members and so on. I have 4 grandchildren that are in the school system right now, and it is a very good system, and I'd like to keep it that way, and that's another reason I'm looking to become the alderman in the 5th district. So sometimes you do hear results that are kind of earth-shaking, it seems. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Last April, Mayor Devine presented me with a certificate of appreciation for 75 years of contribution on services to a wide range of committees throughout my time in West Dallas. I have served in many capacities with the Police and Fire Commission, the Community Development Authority, the Plan Commission, Board of Review, and each and every one of these opportunities has been in a leadership position. I've enjoyed the responsibility and the chance to participate. One of the most exciting periods of time was when Mayor Bell asked me to lead the Centennial celebration. That was a 6-year piece of work with the mayor, and eventually we built up to 25 people on that committee. And the bottom line was that we had the most successful parade in the history of West Dallas with over 200,000 in attendance. We left a lasting memorial to the city in terms of what's right outside this building to the north, the Centennial Plaza. And I deeply appreciated the trust that various people have put in me. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
I think the greatest contribution would be in community involvement and volunteerism. Prior to being in my role as the executive director of the chamber, I was a chamber member, and I got very involved in the community. I joined quite a few different committees. I found that my work on the committees was very fulfilling. I got my family very involved, my parents, my daughter, my grandchildren attend the events that I participated in, and also my husband. Especially with my parents, the quality of life and the self-satisfaction of helping others and helping the community is just It's just fabulous to watch their interaction and to see their sense of satisfaction and pride in themselves when they're helping others. And I think that that's probably what my greatest contribution is to really instill community and volunteerism in my family and in myself.
Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by Daniel Bunting.
If municipalities were given the option to legalize marijuana, would you be for or against it, and why?
That's mine.
We'll begin with Mr. Motter.
Thank you. You're probably not going to like my answer because I'm an old person. No, I would not be for it. And the reasons I'm not for it are I would say if it was prescribed by a doctor, I know there's some medical uses for it. If it was prescribed by a doctor and watched very closely, I would have no objections to that. But to be out and outright available to anybody, no. I mean, it's still, as far as I'm concerned, a narcotic. You can get addicted to it. And you get that old-time, thank you, old-time argument, well, people drink alcohol. But why add another substance to make a problem worse than what we have now? Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Thank you. The complex problem. I've prosecuted hundreds of drug abusers. I've prosecuted hundreds of drug dealers. However, given a choice, having watched my mother and father and sister die from cigarettes, and knowing the pain that they were going through from cancer, I would be in favor of legalized marijuana prescribed by a doctor. Prescription marijuana has worked in other places to relieve pain and suffering. I was the attorney for the Vietnam Veterans Association for 25 years. The amount of stress caused by the Vietnam War to people of my age, 70, caused breakdowns that are still being discovered. My brother was the man who sprayed Agent Orange. If you saw the movies, these types of illnesses that are generated by smoking, drinking, are insidious. I want to be able to cure them, cure the need to overdo them, but on the other hand, I don't see any prescription against pain relief for those who are suffering as long as the doctor cooperates. And orders, excuse me.
Mr. Beaudry?
In addition to Officer Friendly, I was a DARE officer. And again, it's just adding another gateway drug to the system. However, thinking outside the box, as Jim Blask has indicated, if a doctor is prescribing for an individual that has no other way of receiving pain relief, mentally or physically, and it's prescribed in a very close and monitored manner, I'm afraid I'd have to say yes to legalizing it in that respect.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. I'm not prepared to move in the direction of Colorado and some other states and other areas of our country. However, I think that the subject should continue to be researched very carefully. I have 36 years in the medical community on the Metro Healthcare Board with Aurora, on the St. Luke's Medical Center Board, on the Aurora Board. I am in contact with doctors regularly. I'm in contact with our police department and the DEA, and I understand the scourge of drugs. And it concerns me to just open that spigot and say, sure, you can have the drug. But I do think we should consider seriously medical marijuana, medical use, and we ought to research the overall project and program and see if there are safe ways in order to utilize these drugs. We have a problem in West Allis with drugs. We have heroin, and I'm not quite sure from the literature I've read that marijuana doesn't begin down that track. So at the moment, I wouldn't be in favor, but I would certainly research it. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
I don't know enough about marijuana to answer yes or no. What I would need to do is research, weigh the pros and cons, talk to citizen businesses and community leaders.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, thanks. And clearly, I think this is more of a state issue rather than a municipal issue, but it's something that deserves discussion. I would not be in favor of the city of West Allis legalizing marijuana, but I would be in favor of taking a wait-and-see approach and see what happens in the state of Washington, in the state of Colorado, and what type of problems do they have, and what type of benefits, if any, do they have. And then allow Wisconsin to make a decision statewide based on that experience. And that's what a lot of lawmaking is. You look at, well, when you're presented with an issue, when you're presented with a problem, one of your first thoughts, your first concerns is, well, what are other municipalities doing? Certainly they've seen this before. And you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You want to go and find out what your peer communities are doing and learn from that.
All right. Our next question will be from Kelsey Wickersham.
Good evening. There has been much discussion recently about minimum wage. If lawful, would you support a $10.10 per hour minimum wage for all employees in the city?
We'll begin with Mr. Blask.
Yes, I would, Kelly. And the reason being, right now, we have a crisis of employment. The fact is that on a minimum wage for 50% of our population, which is single mothers, you really cannot build a better life or a good life. For you young people, and I say young in relative to my age, I see many people right now who face this, what I consider a horrible challenge of the cost of college education. Our community, because it has a lower gross income per household, is going to face a real educational challenge to send our children on to school. I'm the president of the West Allis West Milwaukee Old Timers Association. We provide for scholarships of only a pittance, $1,000 each per year. That's not enough to pay for college today. And what has happened is that the state and the Pell Grants have made it more expensive than ever because young people are wallowing in debt. They will never be able to buy a house. They won't be able to have a normal life. It causes incredible stress in young marriages. So yes, I am very much in favor.
Mr. Beaudry.
Yes, I'm in favor of $10.10. I don't think that's even enough to maintain a relatively normal lifestyle in the city of West Allis. I think we're lucky living in West Allis. I think it's our economic base is a little bit higher than that. And for people that have to work to just maintain a house and food on the table, $10.10 is very, very close to poverty. I'd like to think that we could see better and do more for the lower income people, but again, this is a federal level, but I surely endorse it. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. If I understood your question correctly, you said, if lawful, would I support an increased minimum wage? And obviously, if lawful, I would support it. I do have questions, however, about the validity or the workability of an increased minimum wage to 10 or 15 or whatever number you would like to put on it, in that typically minimum wage jobs are not intended to be supportive of a full lifestyle. They're intended to be part-time, they're intended to be a partial boost. But there are very wise people in this country who argue that increase the minimum wage is a wise thing, it'll help uplift the entire economy. There are other people, equally bright, who push back and say, wait a minute, that's the wrong direction. Because if it's $10.10 now, when is it going to be 15 or 20? So I don't know where I come down at this moment relative to 1010. I think it's a matter that must have further study, but if lawful, I would support it.
Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
Yeah, I think that's really tough. I mean, I don't know how someone can provide for a family on those kind of wages, but if we would increase our minimum wage, that's also going to affect our businesses and the ramification on the businesses and their budget and what they can afford to pay versus their profits. What that also could do is force them to raise their prices, and then everybody is going to be, you know, affected by that. So that's very tough.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, thanks. I would support a statewide 10-10 minimum wage. I wouldn't support it just for the city of West Allis. That would be an unfair business environment for the city of West Allis, especially when we are very diligently competing to bring businesses into our community. We don't want to be an island in a sea of other laws, other regulations. You don't want to make an island of yourself. So I'd support statewide.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. I also concur with Mr. Clark and Kevin here that I would support it if it became law, but I do feel that the minimum wage is not to be a job that you're going to have for the rest of your life. Most of these minimum wage jobs were part-time school kids, part-time to make extra money to get extra things on the side. It's a shame that some of the way the economy is now, that some people are having to live off of that. I understand that. But I do not think by raising the minimum wage to, thank you, to exorbitant wages, that it would help anybody in the long run. Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by Jessica Drews.
Which do you think is more important, an increase in tax base or an increase in jobs, and why?
We'll begin with Mr. Beaudry.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Which do you think is more important, an increase in tax base or an increase in jobs, and why?
Increase in tax base, right?
Or an increase in jobs?
And increase in jobs. I believe they're both important. I'd like to see the city be able to increase both of them. The tax base by bringing in business and so on. When you bring the tax base up, you're also going to attract people to come into the city for the jobs that business would create. A lot of things that have come into the city that add to the tax base, but it doesn't add very much to the job base. And I think we should be looking at a balance between the two so that we have people coming in looking for housing in the area, spending their money in the area, shopping, gas station, entertainment, whatever. And, that way, I think the city would show some growth in that respect. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. I think this is a little bit of the chicken and the egg, so we can pick either one. However, I think the starting point is the tax base. And if we can do things in this city to further our tax base, that gives us the engine, the economic engine to do more viable things that we need in our city. We have abandoned homes, we have foreclosed homes, we have empty lots, we have opportunity. Our development department, our mayor, our city council, The CDA have done a wonderful job in moving things forward, but we must attend to even more robust activity in terms of development to get the type of climate that is so important to growth, and that is get taxes so we can handle the burdens that are on our citizens, and our city council, relative to being able to do things and do them in a wise way. We don't want to continue to be handcuffed relative to our economic abilities. We have a need for money, and a tax base is a starting point. Having great paying jobs is very important as well, and we can do that with good development. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
I do agree that we need to work with development and city departments on public relations and marketing to work and support our planning department in rejuvenating worn down properties, bring in new businesses, work hard to keep our existing businesses be successful, and also at the same time, do as much as we can to be working with our school district to implement new programs, to get our students more career ready, and to try to bring in more businesses and get our students ready for an increase in jobs.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and I'll tell you, it's the increase in jobs is more important. When I go and do doors and I talk to folks and I have that opportunity to have that interaction with folks, they aren't concerned so much about the tax base. They're concerned about jobs and their job. And the other part of that question, the other component, is that if you have an increase in jobs, the increase in tax base follows with it. And so then you can get the best of both worlds in that sense. So if given the choice, I would definitely take an increase in jobs.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. Well, I believe that we don't want to increase taxes any more than is necessary. And by saying that I'm not saying that I'm against raising taxes, but we want to keep them at a moderate, available way so they're not raised out of proportion. The best way to increase good jobs is to have a good tax base where you in new companies want to move into our city. And if you got good companies moving into our city, we are creating good jobs, and usually those good jobs pay good salaries. So that would be a fair way for everybody to get a job increase or job salaries raised, and still with not going out of line with increasing the taxes in the city. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Thank you. Kevin stole my thunder, but he's a Marquette U Law School graduate, so that happens all the time. It's jobs. It's definitely jobs. If I'm going to create the tax base, that money's going to government. Well, government doesn't always spend money wisely. If I'm going to create jobs, I'm going to give it to the families that need it. And that right now is a better choice. In this community, we need jobs, and that's would be my priority. They're the fuel of human life. They're the fuel of families. It drives me wild when I would be in intake court in Milwaukee County for 146,000 cases, and criminal after criminal came in and said, well, he doesn't have a job, but he's not a bad guy. Or she doesn't have a job, but she's not a bad guy. You need jobs to drive this community, and they're lacking right now, and it's our duty as much as we can to propel those jobs into the next decade, the next several decades, because people need to work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Carly Weigel.
Do you have a specific proposal in mind that you will attempt to accomplish in your first month in office?
We'll begin with Mr. Clark.
Do you have a specific?
Proposal in mind that you will attempt to accomplish in your first month in office?
Well, I would certainly want to introduce this concept that I mentioned in my opening statement, which is to introduce the tools of continuous improvement, which is a fundamental change agent relative to our entire city government. We have our police and fire departments that have gone through accreditation, and that's certainly a part of continuous improvement. All the hospitals are accredited. That's part of continuous improvement. And I think that there's an opportunity as a result of applying these tools to begin to drill down and look at the effectiveness of city government, checking to make sure we don't have silos between departments, that they're working as effectively as possible. And I would introduce that right away. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
I would work hard to find opportunities to talk to people and businesses in the district and in the city. I want to listen to their ideas, their suggestions, their concerns. I would attend as many meetings as possible and community events. I would promise to be receptive to phone calls and emails, and then I would work on a active social media strategy along with plan some district meetings. I also would like to digest the strategic plan and figure out how what role I could have as an alderperson in helping to implement that, or parts of it.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, thank you. I'll give you a real simple, real easy thing, which that can be done. It has to do with something like street signs. As Police and Fire Commissioner, I reached out to Public Works, and I wasn't successful. But if you're at the intersection of National and Oklahoma, and you're not from West Allis, do you know what streets intersect there? There aren't any street signs there. Similarly, on Highway 100, South 108th Street, if you're at the intersection of Highway 100 and Oklahoma, Highway 100 and National, Highway 100 and Lincoln, there aren't any signs for South 108th Street. There's maybe one sign for Oklahoma, maybe one sign for Lincoln. At each of those major intersections, we need to have better street signage to make our community a welcoming community. It's also important for business, for folks trying to find a place, trying to find a location. It's important for public safety. If somebody's calling in a 911 call, they need to be able to give their location and know where they are. That's a really simple, really easy first month type of thing that can be done.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. Well, at the present time, I couldn't say that I was going to do A, B, or C, but there's quite a few things that are in this city that are pertinent at this time. One of our major problems in the coming future is what's going to happen to Highway 100 corridor. That's one major problem that we'd have to look into very closely. One of the other items that I'm very concerned about is helping the East End with redevelopment for the low-income housing down there. Thank you. And see what we can do to keep that from becoming a blighted area. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Your grandmother made wonderful soup. I just want you to know that. My first month would be working on collaborative thinking. I'm a lawyer, so I ask questions all the time. I would be asking questions of my fellow alder, and I'd be asking questions of the people who operate here in City Hall. I would go to city yards. I would go to the police department. I would go to the fire department. I want to know what their goals are in the future. I can't really process what I want to do without their help. Quite honestly, you're going to find in your lives that until we learn to collaborate, work together, it is really difficult. I've been married for 43 years. The first month, I thought I knew my wife. 6 months later, she was pregnant. I didn't know her anymore. But I discovered that she was a new person and wonderful. But in other words, my whole goal would be to try and make the people who I'm going to work with, the citizens, our elected officials. I've been an elected official for 10 years, seen different people come and go, but the people I worked with all became my friends, but we didn't always agree. So I really believe in collaborative thinking, and I would do my best to try and accomplish that. Thank you.
Mr. Beaudry?
My first month, my big project would be, as I mentioned in my opening, two big parcels of land that are open in the 5th Aldermanic District. I would talk to city planning and the other alderman that is in the 5th District and see what is in the works for that those properties. I'm very concerned about them. There was an alderman a while back who had 68th and National available, and I asked him several times what he was going to promote in that area, and he said, when I see it, I'll know it. And hopefully, when I see it, I'll know what it is too. But again, getting back to one of the other questions, a business bringing jobs in, a demand for property or living quarters in the city of West Allis, very important. I'm running for the 5th District. That's where my concerns are. I'm going to work hard for the 5th District, set up some meetings, town hall meetings and so on, with anybody that would like to hear me and my ideas, and hopefully increase the city's tax base, job base, and hopefully we could move ahead. Thank you.
Our next question will be from Autumn Corneth.
If you could have 2 front row seats to any event worldwide, what would it be?
We'll begin with Ms. Brandt.
What?
You could have 2 front row seats at any event
Worldwide.
worldwide. I guess I don't think too far beyond West Allis because I really don't know how to answer that. Very possibly Super Bowl. And just because of the air of excitement, I don't know. I'm sorry. These are tough questions.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, that's a good question. A good question meaning difficult. But you know, I'm going to throw a wrinkle into the question. I'm going to throw the element of time into it. And if I could do that, I think you might have given me a hint on the next question right there. But if that type of question like that, I would go back in time. I'm into history, and I really would go back and view events in history, or even just walking the streets of Milwaukee in the 1900s, the decade of the 1900s. See what things are like. Walking the streets of West Allis back then, seeing what things are like. That's what I would do, and so I would request a time machine. Thank you.
Could you just repeat that question again, please?
If you could have 2 front row seats to any worldwide event, what would it be?
Well, I think I would agree with what Mr. Haass says. I would go back in time also and look at West Allis. And probably I wouldn't have to go back that far because I do remember some times in West Allis when we had streetcars and things of that sort. But that would be my answer. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
First of all, I assume I'm taking my wife. 2 front row seats, yes. Well, on our honeymoon, we went to the horse races. That was wonderful. I love the Kentucky Derby, to be quite honest. So I would probably ask 2 front row seats, even though I actually prefer the infield. If you've never gone there, it's 100,000 young people having the time of their life for one day. But the Kentucky Derby would certainly be one. The second one that I would like to be at is I'd like to be at the inauguration of a president. I was a history and English major in college, and I was a reporter. I was what they called a stringer, so I had to write articles, and Goldwater came through, and Johnson came through, and other presidential candidates came through, and I was always invited to be part of their entourage. Nelson Rockefeller, he's dead now, invited me up to his room. He didn't know that I was underage, so we had drinks together. So I love the presidency and what it means. If, in fact, you get to read at some point in your literary career The Making of the President. It's a wonderful story. And here was the author sitting next to me interviewing Nelson Rockefeller. Those kinds of front row seats are what make a life worthwhile. But my first choice would be with my wife at the Kentucky Derby or at the birth of my next grandchild.
Mr. Beaudry?
2 tickets, time machine. I'm not going backwards. I go forward. Took me 10 years up the road. I know where there's going to be empty lots. I know what businesses are going strong, and that's the business I'm going after. A while back, our mayor, Joyce Radke, went after Quad Graphics, took over Kearney and Trecker, built a beautiful tax-based company, brought it to the city. She was looking ahead, and very important. The other 2 tickets, I'd like to be in the front row at an audience with the Pope. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, the audience with the Pope's getting crowded because that's the first one. I'd like to return to Italy, specifically the Vatican, with my wife Agnes, and have an audience with the Pope. The other would be to return to Antarctica with my son, and this time get to see the large colony of emperor penguins. I've seen hundreds of thousands of other penguins, but not the emperor, other than one on an ice float that just happened to be going out to sea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Val Ruiz. Val Ruiz.
What is your perception of crime in West Dallas?
We'll begin with Mr. Haass.
Yeah, thanks. Crime is an issue. Public safety is always a priority in our community. Our crime numbers, I know from my service on the Police and Fire Commission, are going in the right direction. They're going down, but still it is an issue, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Our community, our police our police department has instituted a number of creative initiatives to try and resolve the issues of crime. And as a Common Council, we obviously need to support them. That's simple. That's easy. And we need to continue issues. The most recent initiative that the police department has begun is to have a tavern car to deal with taverns. We know we have lots of taverns in our community, and it's an important thing to reach out to the tavern owners and the licensed bartenders and know what the rules are, make sure that they're following the rules, and try and be proactive that way.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. I also believe that as being an alderman in the 5th District and serving as a whole alderman department, and we have to work closely with our police departments. I know they're doing, with our police department, I know they're doing a very good job. It's a terrible situation with the crime we have out there. I know it's been down from what it has been, but anything that we can do to help the police department and the other agencies that are involved with crime in the city, we should certainly put a good effort forth to see what we can do to help. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Thank you. I was the chairman of Project Outreach for the Milwaukee Bar Center for 25 years. Basically what we did is we went to the schools and tried to talk about the law and justice. And that's very difficult today. I also was a prosecutor at Children's Court and a prosecutor downtown, and as an assistant district attorney, and then became a district attorney. I think that when you talk about crime, you're talking about everything from small stuff to big stuff. And the point is, with large crime or large criminality, murder, rape, it's so violent and so disruptive of the family unit that it spreads and it's amorphous. And we need to deal in West Dallas with those victims of crime who are left out somewhat in the cold by either a callous system or an uncaring system. So my answer to crime in West Dallas would be probably to add more police officers, but more empathetic police officers who not only could understand what the roots and elements of crime and criminality are, but what the victims might feel and care about, and in that way bring our community together. Thank you very much.
Mr. Beaudry?
What about crime? As 30 years went by, my perspective on crime has changed. Used to be a bar fight was a bar fight. Now, a bar fight can end up with automatic weapons at it. Who knows? It's a changing situation. Unfortunately, what West Dallas used to be is not what it is now. I think we need our police department to step up and continue the good work they're doing, add some additional officers if we can, and continue the good work. I work with Crime Stoppers in the city of West Dallas, and we hear quite a bit about the crime that's happening in the city of West Dallas, and it's changed from when I worked. A little bag of marijuana was a big thing back when I was a police officer, and now that's a little thing. It's a bale or heroin and cocaine that is coming into the city, and that breaks down the city, the family structure, and consequently the city suffers as well from that. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
West Dallas is not alone with these issues. We certainly have quality of life matters such as domestic violence, drugs, DUI, sensitive crimes. On the other side of the coin, we have an excellent leadership team in place at the police department. We have great cooperation with the DEA and HIDA. We have officers that are more skilled, more highly trained, more capable today than we've ever had. During my 15 years, I was involved in hiring probably 50% of the police officers currently on the force, and I've watched the evolution, the education, the knowledge that these folks have. But we are dealing with serious issues, and we, in my mind, must provide even more resources to our police department certainly in the form of technology and in terms of just giving the best advances possible so that we can perform the duties necessary. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
What I would like to see is an increase in communication to our residents and then also our businesses. I recently attended a police department neighborhood watch meeting, and I kind of just stumbled upon it. And that really shouldn't be the case. We should all be aware of different meetings and different, we should all be aware of when there's something like that is taking place. It was really good, important information, a lot of information about the structure and what the police department does that I wasn't aware of. I met with Police Chief Chuck Padgett after the meeting. We set up a separate meeting, and we talked about how we can help to increase communication between residents and businesses, and then specifically like the tavern program, making sure that the tavern owners are aware of a new program before it's implemented so they understand it and can buy into it. So what I would do is better communicate to our citizens about the crimes that have recently taken place so they can be aware of it and be better prepared. And try to increase communication.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Dylan Jensen.
If you were trying to convince someone to buy a home in West Dallas, what reasons would you give?
We'll begin with Mr. Motter.
Thank you. Well, there's several good reasons why to move in West Dallas. First of all, it's a lovely place to live. We have an excellent school system. We have good streets, even though you do hear once in a while people complain this isn't good. But in general, everything is good. I'm not saying to the point that nothing could be improved. But if you want to move into a community that's well located, you can go east, west, north, or south, whichever way you want to go, from being in the center of many things. It's an excellent place to live. That's what I'd say would be a good selling point for people to move into the city of West Dallas. Thank you.
Mr. Blask?
Thank you. Probably I would emphasize school, athletics, Department of Recreation, programs in the arts. This afternoon I was speaking with a music instructor at another school. He was raised in West Dallas, and he believed the building blocks of his life were formed here and at West Dallas Central. And they were. So much of what he accomplished was found in his education and training in West Dallas, as well as the family structure that we've got in our neighborhoods. I love my neighbors, and the point is that makes for a strong family and community structure. They're not all my age. Some are even young. The point is that we all work together and we try and watch out for each other. The homes are safe. The community is a really responsible one when it comes to looking for resources to help our young and our old. If depending on the age of the person, I'd point out the senior activities. Depending on the background of the person in terms of religious belief, I'd point out our many, many churches and places of worship. The advantages of owning a home in West Dallas are that you can walk to almost any place and find what you want, whether it's shopping or I'm finished, according to the young lady.
Mr. Beaudry?
Yes, I believe convincing somebody to buy a house in West Dallas should be relatively easy. You point out the quality school system we have. As I stated before, my 4 grandchildren are all in the system, a couple at Frank Lloyd Wright and a couple at Walker. All the different churches, all the different denominations that are available to the people. The Recreation Department is very good. Stores, locations, businesses, restaurants. We have a Block Watch program going on in the city of West Dallas that's been 30, 40 years now. It's going, and the coverage is almost citywide. Every house receives a Block Watch letter talking about different things that are happening in the city. Jobs. Again, getting back to these open parcels of land, if we can find the right business to come in there and create some jobs, you're going to have the demand for the properties that are open or are for sale. And hopefully that would make the city a stronger and more vibrant area. A little bit of work on the Greenfield Avenue area would be appropriate, I think. And the hotel that is supposedly going in.
Thank you, Mr. Beaudry.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you for your question. I just jotted down a quick list here. For our logo, our revised logo of a few years ago, we're the city at the center, and I think that's a great place to be. We can get in and out and anywhere quickly. We're a city of churches. Our school system is solid. Recreation is available and plentiful. We have good housing stock. We have neighbors helping neighbors. We have, in our neighborhood, a new neighbor across the street. And the other day, during one of these cold days that we've had way too many, our garage door was open for about 8 hours. And I've been around the police enough to know that that's just losing the entire contents of the garage. But the bottom line is this neighbor called and said, I'm concerned. Are things okay? Your door is open. We didn't know that it had been left open. That was part of that neighbor helping neighbor. We have no corruption in this city. We are not Chicago. Our police, our fire, our EMT, highly trained, exceptional people. They respond quickly. They're really, really an asset to this community. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
I would tell people that our citizens and businesses are hardworking, energetic, enthusiastic people, and they really go out of their way to help one another. I would tell them that we have a small-town character while having ready access to all the amenities of the major metropolitan area. We have great schools, friendly neighbors, many parks and trails, and great opportunities for shopping, dining, and recreation.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, here in our community, we're very fortunate that we have a great quantity and quality of starter homes for younger couples moving in to perhaps their first house. My wife and I were exactly that younger couple at one time who bought our first house in West Allis. West Allis is where we grew up. West Allis is where we wanted to stay. And the city benefits from that, having that influx of younger couples who improve the house and maybe move on, or maybe stay there for a long time. We're on our second house in West Allis. We're very fortunate that we have a very good school system. My kids are in second grade at Hoover Elementary in the West Allis, West Milwaukee School District. And yes, again, we are the city at the center. Everything in the metro area is a short distance away. The jobs, the cultural activities are all right at our doorstep. That's our biggest selling point.
Thank you.
Our final question will be from, again, Rachel Kirchner.
If money were not an issue, what city service would you like to see started or expanded?
We'll begin with Mr. Blask.
Expansion of a single city service would be a difficult choice. Quite honestly, I would probably choose, despite all our other services, I would probably choose the health department. I am a firm believer that a strong health department contributes to the well-being of a community, both mental and physical. Included within the health department, I would expect to expand the use of therapists. By that I mean family, individual, and marital therapists. That is such a crucial area to me in terms of the quality of life. Not everyone can talk to the person even who they love most. So you need sometimes a different person that you can address and talk to. And I don't want it to be your bartender, and I don't want it to be someone down at on the corner. I want it to be someone who's trained and someone who will help you. I think that the schools provide guidance counselors who are in effect therapists for you right now. But out there in real life, for a senior who needs somebody to talk to about being alienated or trapped, and many of them may have cabin fever right now, they have no one to talk to. I'm sorry, I've just got to finish my point. We have Interfaith, which provides a lot of quality services throughout this community. I would try and invest in Interfaith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blask. Mr. Beaudry.
Well, as a 30-year police officer, I better back the police department. And the reason is, if we have a strong, safe city, the question before becomes even easier. People want to be safe. You show them a safe city, a good, strong, visible police department, people are going to say, I want to live in that city. A lot of times there's crime. I'm sure that the competition for houses in the inner core is not as great as they would be elsewhere in the city of Milwaukee. But I think a strong, visible police department would increase the want of people to be in a city West Allis. And again, create the jobs, get more people in, better business, more business, and you have a lively community, and it would support itself. Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Quality of life is really the thread throughout all of this. And when you get right down to it, the deep ingrained issues that this community is facing is domestic violence, is drugs, the whole DUI issue, and sensitive crimes. I would like to give more resources to our police leadership to help them work on these very, very maddening issues that really affect our city, the viability and the health of our city. Thank you.
Ms. Brandt?
And I agree with that, but then I'm also thinking of it from the health department standpoint and, dealing with those issues emotionally and, going on with your life. So my thinking was the health department, and I don't know the specifics of everything they do there, but to incorporate more of the emotional and the social and some educational components to their role.
Mr. Haass?
Thanks. The answer is public safety, public safety, public safety. Two of our candidates have talked about the police side of things. I'll take a moment also to talk about the fire department side of things. When I started on the Police and Fire Commission 9 years ago, the fire department had approximately 5,500 calls for service each year. This year, that number, and last year, that number has eclipsed 8,000 calls for service. That's all with the same or less number of personnel. It is, in particular, a department that has had to do more with less, and they've done it admirably. That is something that if I had the magic wand, the money-making machine, that's what I would put it into public safety. And the folks that are familiar with the city know how this has worked also. Back in the 1970s, the city of West Allis had 700-some employees. That includes police, fire, and DPW, all city departments here at City Hall, Health Department, Library. Currently, that's down to 515 employees. And it's continuing a trend of asking our employees to do more with less. If I had all the money in the world, I would change that situation for our employees.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. I also concur with Mr. Haass that public safety would be probably on the top of the line, but I honestly believe that all our departments are doing a good job with what they have at this time. But I do believe that public safety would be up there. And also, I would also say that's very important to the city is our development department. Because every time we get an inquiry into this city of a company or somebody that wants to move into this city, we got to compete with every other community in the state of Wisconsin. So whatever we can do to shore up our development departments, I'm not putting them over to the Department of Safety, but departments like this are where it's going to make the city run and generate money so we can do for these other departments. Thank you.
We do have time for closing statements. Each closing statement will be limited to 1 minute, and we will start with Mr. Beaudry and going this way.
I'm going to step up and continue on safety. As the other alderman candidates have said, but safety is very important, starting with business. If business wants to come to your city, if you show them a city that has robberies, holdups, car theft, all the other crimes that happen, do I want to come there? Do I want to put my money into a building? Am I going to be able to find jobs or people that come and work there when they go out after work and their car is gone, or they have to have a security officer walk them to the parking lot to get in their car. Safety is the important thing. Growth will follow. You show everybody on the outside you have a safe city, and the people that are interested in coming to your city will do so. The fifth, as I say, the 5th Alderman District has some open property.
Thank you, Mr. Beaudry.
Really like to see it developed properly.
Mr. Blask?
Are we going this way instead?
Yes.
All right. In 1950, the first Jim Blask was elected West Dallas alderman. That was my father. He went through an era of massive changes in the community. Believe it or not, even this property was still a farmer's field. And now you're going to see the next generation of changes from what has occurred in those years. 63 years ago, this community was a different community. 100,000 people worked here every day. We've lost jobs. However, we have maintained as a community because of one thing, family. And I honestly am impressed. And I want to say how much it means to be here with you, because you appear to be the product of good families. And ultimately, that's what I want West Dallas to be, is a family community. I know it's the city at the center. I would prefer to change the name. West Dallas is family.
Mr. Motter?
Thank you. I would like to be alderman here in the 5th District, just to prove the point that we have a lovely city to live in. We have a lovely school system, and we're developing things in this city. It takes time, but the development part is working well, and our police and fire departments are next to none. They can always be improved if there's more money available to do certain things. But at this time, we have a city that's operating excellently. And then that's my closing statement. Thank you.
Mr. Haass?
Yeah, and thanks again to the Youth Commission for the opportunity for this. You had some outstanding questions. And I'd like to tell you again that as your alderman, I will be responsible and responsive. Again, responsible as a good steward of our tax dollars. Responsive, I gave you my cell number before, and folks can call me. I half thought that my phone might start ringing while I was sitting here. And check out my website, electkevinhaass.com. You'll have more information about me, and I'm just really proud to be a West Dallas guy, and I'm really proud of our community, because it's our community. We're all here in West Dallas.
Ms. Brandt?
Preparing for this event has been overwhelming. Not knowing what questions that you were going to be asking was very challenging. Listening to the questions that you asked was very challenging. It forced me to really spend some time thinking about myself and our community. I deal with many challenges on a daily basis in my role at the chamber, everything from a person asking how to start a business to someone who is homeless and needs a tremendous amount of help. I listen to their needs and go out of my way to find out how to help them. I do this because I truly do care about others. If elected, I will utilize my experience and knowledge from this position to serve in a leadership role as alderperson. If elected, I promise to be responsive to your needs.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the Youth Commission and the voters of the 5th District. My campaign message, it is simple and clear. To me, Wayne Clark, working for a better West Dallas means that I will do my best to listen, to understand, and to represent your needs. Remember, it's your government, your money, your city. You deserve someone who will work for you and be responsible to you. I respectfully ask for your vote February 18th, and thank you for your consideration. If there was time, I'd like to reverse roles and ask all of these young people a question, which is, if you were able to set the table and answer the question, what do you want from your representative, what would those answers be? I think that would be very interesting, because you folks represent the future of our city. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much for participating in tonight's forum. There's campaign literature for the candidates on a table in the back, and thank you. Good night.